Bride of Frankenstein is one of the first horror sequels ever made, and still one of the best. Director James Whale returns and puts on it his stamp of quality. It gives the monster more personality, stays more true to the novel, and completes the story. It does have its tacky moments, like the opening prologue where Mary Shelley, played by Elsa Lanchester, is telling the story of Frankenstein as we recap the first movie leading up to the burning windmill. It's funny how they pretend that's exactly how Mary Shelley's story goes, when really it's nothing like it. But then she continues her story, and that's where Bride of Frankenstein picks up. A man accidentally falls into a water cave beneath the windmill and finds the monster is still alive. It's a creepy scene, and the monster's first appearance is a real doozy. He commits his first murder right away by strangling the man and then throwing his wife down for good measure. Oh, brutal. This makes the monster seem real threatening and actually lives up to the word monster, but later on he becomes more sympathetic. After he climbs out, he scares the crap out of some other woman. Overacting at its finest. This old squawking crow is Una O'Connor, the same annoying bitch from another James Whale film, The Invisible Man. I have to say, the monster's makeup in this film is great. Props to Jack Pierce for his attention to detail. The monster actually looks like he's been through a fire. Some of his hair is burned away, revealing metal clamps that we never saw before. We assume Frankenstein would have used these to hold the skull together. As the movie goes on, the makeup gradually changes as if the monster's wounds are healing. I also like the fact that he never changes out of those old mangy clothes. There's no need to polish him up, just let him show all the abuse he's been through. Colin Clive is back as Dr. Frankenstein, but the wife is played by a different actress, Mae Clarke in the original, Valerie Hobson in the sequel. Frankenstein no longer wants to pursue his experiments. He's learned his lesson and now wants to enjoy his time with his wife, who he neglected so much in the first movie.
I've changed my mind. I won't do it.
This makes way for a new mad scientist, Dr. Pretorius, played by Ernest Thesiger, who wants to work with Frankenstein. He steals the whole show very easily. He's like the devil on Frankenstein's shoulder, pestering him to create another monster. It's no wonder why Frankenstein refuses, but he's fascinated by Dr. Pretorius' own creations. Unlike Frankenstein, who took bodies from graves, Pretorius grew them, all tiny people in jars. The special effects here are amazing for 1935. It may even be the first movie to show tiny people, even before Dr. Cyclops and the Incredible Shrinking Man. Meanwhile, the monster is running around getting bothered and shot at everywhere he goes. He gets hung up kind of like Jesus Christ and brought to prison. You start to feel sorry for him pretty quickly. The monster escapes into the woods and finds a cabin where there lives an old blind man who he makes friends with. This is a very important scene because the man teaches the monster how to talk.
And this is wine. To drink.
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 It's both funny and heartwarming.
Good, good.
This scene draws its basis from the novel, and it's become famous and again parodied in Young Frankenstein. Tragedy happens when two wandering hunters happen to come across the cabin and find the monster. They could have left well enough alone, but instead they gotta burn the place down. What a couple of dumb shits. The monster storms into a cemetery and finds an underground crypt where Dr. Pretorius is drinking to a skull. He's one sick dude, you gotta love him. I especially like the way he reacts to seeing the monster.
Oh. I thought I was alone. Good evening.
That's what makes him so great. He's not afraid of anything. He proposes the idea to create a mate for the monster, and the monster likes it. Pretorius shows up at Frankenstein's door with the idea. When he refuses, Pretorius threatens him with the monster. Frankenstein is horrified seeing his own creation and is surprised to hear it talk.
Frankenstein.
Yes, there have been developments since he came to me.
Pretorius implies here that he's the one who taught the monster how to speak. It's a lie, as if rubbing it in Frankenstein's face, saying, yeah, I have more control over your creation than you do. It perfectly sums up what a cool and cocky sleazeball he is. When Frankenstein refuses again, they kidnap his wife and blackmail him until he has no choice. This is another big part of the novel, where the monster asks Frankenstein to make him a wife. In the novel, Frankenstein goes through with it until the last minute and destroys the creation. Then the monster gets pissed off and kills Frankenstein's own wife. But the movie's take on it is way different. The laboratory spectacle gets into high gear again, with lots of the same pieces of machinery as before, both new ones too. There's another assistant all of a sudden named Carl, played by Dwight Frye. He's the same actor that played the assistant Fritz in the first movie. Obviously they're not the same character because Fritz dies and Carl is not a hunchback. Why they would use the same actor to play the same type of character, I have no idea. What's funny here, the monster gets really impatient and throws Carl off the top of the castle. Whoa, that's ironic. Karloff throws Carl off. Dwight Frye's been killed by Dracula as well. I guess his characters just can't survive through a movie. Poor Dwight Frye. Might as well call him Fright Die. Wow, I still have a month of Monster Madness ahead of me, and already I'm going cuckoo. The bride comes to life, looking like a mummy at first. Dr. Pretorius announces her as the Bride of Frankenstein.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
Of course, that's the title of the movie, but it doesn't make any sense because Frankenstein is not the monster's name. I guess he means of Frankenstein, as in the bride is created of Frankenstein? No, that doesn't make any sense either. You know, people have always been so confused since day one, thinking that Frankenstein is the monster. Universal would slap the name over the monster's face, on the trailers, and on the posters. And to top it all off, they pull off this shit saying the Bride of Frankenstein. This is the reason the confusion never went away. There's also a short clip that exists of Boris Karloff playing chess with Bela Lugosi, and Lugosi calls Karloff Frankenstein.
Ready for the test, Dracula? I'm ready, Frankenstein.
The monster is not Frankenstein. I don't know what the deal is. Then they unwrap the bride's bandages and do up her hair. I never understood what the deal is with that weird hairdo. Regardless, the bride has become another famous monster, with the look being imitated constantly all around in Halloween costumes and commercials everywhere. I find that surprising because the bride is only in the movie for a few minutes, and she never comes back in any of the sequels. Also, she doesn't do much other than jerk her head around like a bird, and never speaks other than some hisses and screams. She's played by Elsa Lanchester, the same actress who played Mary Shelley in the prologue, but she's only credited for playing Mary Shelley. For the bride, they just have a question mark, like they did with Karloff in the first movie. Except with Karloff, they reveal his name at the end, whereas the bride, it's always a question mark. The bride simply rejects the monster. She finds him frightening just like everyone else. The monster gently touches her arm, and for a moment you think it's gonna work out, but nope. She screams again, and the monster goes into Plan B. He allows Frankenstein to leave the castle before pulling a self-destruct lever, destroying himself, the bride, Pretorius, and all that remains of the castle. It's a good ending, but my only problem with it is they needed a way for the castle to explode, so there just conveniently happens to be a lever that destroys it all. Why the hell would Frankenstein have a self-destruct lever, especially without any kind of safety lock? What if somebody hit it by accident? Anyway, for a 1930s movie, it's pretty sophisticated, with a dark sense of humor, lots of great camera angles, and a full musical score, whereas the first movie had hardly any music. Giving the monster dialogue and an emotional side really allows Boris Karloff a chance to shine. In many ways, Bride of Frankenstein surpasses the original. It's a masterpiece all the way.
Fire is good.
Fire, no good.